You have big dreams of losing weight and creating a healthy, joyful life. But you find yourself craving sugar, caught up in what the scale says, and diet hopping. Dieting is the old way of losing weight. And the good news is I'm going to give you a new way of eating so you can ditch diets for good and build a healthy relationship with real food. My name is Megan Olson, certified nutrition practitioner, creator of Skinny Fitalicious, and your host of the Dish on Diets show.
Hello, friends. My client Sarah is on the podcast today. Sarah came to work with me the beginning of 2024, and she came to me in a very unhealthy place mentally and physically. She was beating herself up and really, really hard on herself. Sarah didn't realize that being so hard on herself was the exact thing keeping her stuck. Shaming herself, making herself feel guilty, trying to be super strict, it was making everything worse. And Sarah really had to learn how to be gentle and kind. This is something I have to coach all my clients on because we, as women, are so hard on ourselves. And those are things Sarah shares in today's podcast about how her negativity towards herself was a huge part of what she had to unlearn to be successful and come to a place of peace with food, the scale, her body, her self-image. And I find Sarah's story to be really representative of so many of the women I work with who are mistreating themselves and not realizing that it's the exact thing that's getting in the way of their goals. That's why what I do with women is so different than other coaches, because it's rarely about the food or the calories. It's about how you're treating yourself. It's about being super strict and hard on ourselves like drill sergeants. That's what people try to do, but positive behaviors don't result from that. The clients that I work with don't even realize they're doing this to themselves and that it's the exact thing that's getting in the way of them reaching their goals. Sarah was one of them. She had no idea she was doing this. Sarah has so much great advice in today's discussion. I know you're going to just learn so much to help you in your journey listening to what she's learned. And I don't want to steal her thunder, so here she is. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you on today. I'm so excited for you to tell your story to the listeners.
I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, why don't we start with just whatever you feel comfortable sharing? Tell us a little bit about yourself, life, kids, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So my name is Sarah. I'm 49, soon to be 50 years old. I currently live in Maryland. I've been here for the last, 15 years or so. I work full-time in law enforcement, and I am the mom of two boys that are 8 and 11 and are both involved in numerous sports teams. So my husband and I stay very busy driving them around and attending all of their functions, as well as with our work schedules.
Yeah, so you're not busy at all.
No.
You got nothing going on.
I saw something today that was like in my dream life. I wake up and there's no one in my house, and I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. But yeah, it's busy, but I love every minute of the sport. So we try to fit in everything that we can and, be as available as we can for them. So
Good. Well, we're here today to talk about your weight journey. You came to me, let me go back to my notes. You came to me in around March of 2024.
Yes.
And that's when we started working together. But let's back up first and let's have you talk a little bit about your weight journey with the listeners so that they understand like where you came from prior to working with me last year.
Sure. So I think I started dieting when I was around 14 years old. My parents were both chefs when I was growing up and worked in restaurants, owned a restaurant. So food was a really big part of our lives, our daily lives, our entertaining lives. And I really had no idea about nutrition at the time. I didn't think about it. I just ate what tasted good, and my parents made lots of amazing food. And then in 8th grade, I wanted to try out for the 9th grade cheerleading squad when I was going to high school. And I had been practicing in the neighborhood with a lot of friends, and I went to the tryouts feeling really confident. And on the last day of tryouts, the coach at the time told all of us that we had to get weighed. So in front of everybody, she weighed me and said that I was too heavy and that she had to let me try out, but I would never make the team.
Wow.
So being the type of person that I am, I thought, well, I'm going to try out anyway, and I'm going to show her that I'm the best one. And so I went to try out and of course didn't get chosen. And I was really, really heartbroken about that for a while. But I had a talk with myself and I thought, well, if I want to be a cheerleader, then I need to make some changes. Interesting thing was they fired that coach about a month later. I don't know if it was because of that or whatever, but she was gone. And
Mm.
so I used my ninth grade year to really change a lot of things in my life because I wanted to become a cheerleader. And I joined a gym that was, I don't know, a mile or two from the house. And my parents worked all the time. So I would ride my bike after school to the gym. I started taking fitness classes and I started changing what I was eating. I went from eating pizza and chips at lunch at school to bringing some pretzels and an apple and, some other things that I believed were healthier. Again, I had no knowledge at this time. And it worked. I lost about 20 pounds and I tried out, for my sophomore year and made the cheerleading team and wasn't weighed. They never did that again. But it was good for me. I started learning a little bit about health and, I was very sedentary prior to that. And so now I was exercising regularly. And I started my senior year of high school teaching aerobics classes. There was an opportunity at the gym where somebody quit and I had no training, no knowledge, and they asked if anyone was interested. And I just got up there and started teaching step class. And, when I went to college, I basically taught my way through college, to make extra money for food and living expenses. And all that time, I, would be careful with what I ate, mostly just portions and avoiding certain foods. But I never really did that I can remember a specific diet. I was always just super active. I used exercise as a way in my mind to
Mm.
control my weight and, how I looked. And I was trying to think back, and some of the first diets that I remember trying was when I went to grad school. I remember trying Weight Watchers. I remember trying the zone diet, which was like a 30-30-40 ratio of food groups. Again, a lot of calorie counting, a lot of trying to restrict and do small portions, avoiding foods. I've done Whole30 a bunch of times. I remember when I was after grad school, I got a job teaching high school and I was the athletic trainer after school. So again, always really busy, but I joined this local diet group where you would go and they would give us tips on losing weight. And I always remember because the lady said at night when you feel like eating, you should put on teeth whitening strips so you don't put food in your mouth. And it was, just this little local lady who got women together and was trying to give us tips on, avoiding different foods or snacking, whatever. It didn't really have an official name. I've also tried, I guess, the 21-day fix. But again, just lots of calorie counting, lots of restriction, lots of trying to avoid foods, ordering salads, thinking that was better choice, trying not to eat a lot of dessert, and just tons of exercise. So those are some of the diets I've tried and things that I've done, I guess, to this point.
Did you lose weight doing those diets?
Well, yeah, I always, would lose weight. And then eventually it would come back. And, when I was looking back on that in preparation for this and asking myself why. And I think it's the same reason as everybody is I didn't make it a lifestyle. I did it for a certain period of time and it just didn't maintain it. Another thing was, after a while, as I aged, using exercise to control my weight kind of stopped working, especially after I had kids. And so that was another reason why I was looking for coaching because for so long I was able to, monitor my eating and use exercise and keep the weight at a certain level. And then just in the last probably 8 to 10 years, that hasn't worked. I also found it really hard to try to adapt those diets to vacations or holidays, family life when we're out and I'm trying to prepare food, but it's not always perfect if we're gone all day. And so I needed to find something that I could do all the time instead of just for 30 days or 3 weeks or, whatever the plan was.
Hmm. Right. Right. So you were able to lose weight, but it always came back eventually, and it wasn't really something you could stick to long term.
Yeah, and something else that's happened to me, and this is probably what led me to you the most, is at the end of, well, I would say like in fall of 2000, I tried Noom and
Mm.
I had learned about it through a friend and I had a lot of success. What I liked about Noom originally was the more I exercised, the more calories it would give me every day, and it was working. I lost about 15 pounds and I was able to, keep it off for 6 months. I was logging my food every day. And then at the end of 2020 in November, I got COVID and I was very sick for 2 weeks with a fever.
Mm.
And then after that, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, I lost a lot of my hair. Probably 90% of my hair fell out.
Hmm.
And I was very, very stressed. And so even though I think I was still doing Noom and logging it, I don't know if I was stress eating or I just don't know, but the weight slowly started coming back on. And I also, after the COVID, started having really horrible GI issues. And I spent 2 years going to doctors, getting tests done, trying different medicines. But I was gaining weight. I was having constant stomach pain, constant bloating. And, on top of being almost bald, it was just a really, really horrible time. And to feel so successful with the weight loss and then go to where everything I was trying, with more exercise, less food, and I was still getting heavier and heavier. I was the heaviest I had been when I first spoke to you in a long time. And my mental health was just in the drain as far as my self-image. I felt like such a failure because I had always been able to make a plan and, meet my goals. And then now
Yeah.
nothing was really working. And so I just was really at my wit's end when I came to you, and I had never felt so bad about myself. It's hard as a type A personality to try really hard every day and be going through all of these health issues and not feel like anything's working and not being able to find a medical person that can help you um, with these issues. So my negative self-talk, my constant guilt, my self-blame, and I just like hyper focused on it. And I was crying every day. My husband would come upstairs and I would be in the shower just bawling. So it was a really bad time. And that was kind of what was the stimulus to, figure out something to do and get some help because I wasn't having success by myself any longer.
Mm. Got it. So that led you to finding me.
Yeah, so how I actually found you, I was thinking back about this is I have been cooking some of your recipes that I found on Pinterest. That's how I found you.
Yeah.
And one of my very favorite recipes are those apple pancakes. I think that's what started it all, is I was just looking up, recipes on Pinterest and came across, some search term that led me to your recipe. And then I was like, oh, these are so delicious. Let me look up other Skinny Fitalicious recipes. And then eventually, I think I got an ad on Pinterest, or maybe I was following you on Facebook for recipes again. And I learned that you had a podcast. And recently, my husband added, what is it, Amazon Music to our phones. And I
Mhm.
found that your podcasts were on Amazon Music. So I started listening, and every podcast that I listened to, whether it was a listener like me or someone that had worked with you or just you talking about different lessons, I was like, oh my God, does she know all of my problems? This is exactly what I'm going through. This everything that you spoke about were things I really needed to hear. And I just listened and listened and listened. And then finally, when I had tried all of these doctors, I was going through like working with mental health professionals that specialized in the gut brain connection because they thought that might be what's causing my GI issues. And none of
Mm.
it was working. And I finally just went to my husband and I said, I really want to try working with Megan. And I talked to him about your program. And I said, I've done everything else and I need some help. I need somebody with some education who's there to support me and teach me. And So that was the conversation we had. And then when he was on board, I signed up for that consultation with you.
Mm. Wow, so you found me through a recipe, the apple
Yeah, through
pancakes.
Pinterest. I don't know if people even Pinterest anymore, but I do.
I think a lot of
So
people do. Honestly, it's crazy how much traffic my website gets from Pinterest. And I don't go and use Pinterest, but yeah, there are people who use it, I believe. So
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of your recipes are on there, so you're getting a lot of support without knowing it.
yeah, that is too funny. Okay, so you signed up for a consultation, and then what happened?
So we talked for a while, and I was nervous because, I had, like as I said, the last couple of years have been, that time after I had COVID has probably been one of the hardest periods of my life with losing my hair and all my new health issues and feeling like such a failure. So I was nervous about the consult because I didn't want to get my hopes up that it was going to be successful and then, something was going to happen that it wasn't going to work, or maybe you didn't want to work with me, or, I just was, I remember being nervous before the consultation because I just didn't want to get hopeful again and then have it not work out.
Mm,
And I also knew that I didn't want to quit and that I needed help. So I signed up for the consultation. And, after we spoke and you gave me some homework to do, and um, I just realized that it was going to be really good support. And I didn't know what to expect at all. I didn't know, what the mindset work would involve, but I knew I was really good at being consistent. If you give me a task, I'm going to do it. I might overdo it because of my crazy personality, but I knew that if you gave me direction, I could follow it. I was confident in that.
yeah. Do you remember the email you sent me when you signed up and you said, Megan, I need to know that this is going to be the last time?
I know.
Yeah.
I was really hopeless when I first called you. I mean, I had probably been to 20 different medical professionals in 2 years. I mean,
Yeah.
and nobody was able to help either with my mental part, the way I felt, the weight gain. It just, and no one really seemed to care. Nobody cared enough to try to find an answer. So,
Yeah.
that was where I was starting from.
Yeah, you definitely were scared. You
Yeah.
definitely were fearful of doing something again. And I think you were also fearful of doing more damage to your body and being back in that place of feeling even worse.
I was, and I also knew that, it was a financial commitment for my family, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to be successful if I was, using those funds to do something for myself. I wanted to make sure that, it was going to be worth it and I was going to learn something and that it was going to help as opposed to all these things that I had been doing for years that weren't helping. So those were all things that I considered while, we were going through the initial steps.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how you ended up finding me. That's how we ended up starting working together. So, what were some of the things that you were struggling with as we started working together? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I had never I'd always tracked calories, but I had never specifically been taught or, learned to look at what I was eating in those calories. And I think I eat fairly healthy, but I had never thought about like needing protein, needing a certain amount of protein,
Mm,
or I've never looked at my fiber. I can tell you that even with all of the, GI issues I've had, I just thought, oh, well, I'm eating fruits and vegetables and I had no idea any of those things. I also had no understanding about using the food scale. I've always just used, measuring cups or, what I considered a serving size. I don't know. So that all was very new to me, with the food angle of it, but also, with the main reason I wanted to work with you is for the mindset work. Like I knew I could find a way to lose weight. I mean, not that it would be the best way. I probably would gain it back, but when I came to you, the biggest thing I wanted to do was just get my brain healthier about how I felt about myself and give myself the confidence that I knew I could lose weight and I could have success again. So the mindset stuff was what I was really, really looking forward to when we started. And, um, so in addition to learning those new things about accuracy with food measuring and looking at what you're actually eating every day, I was really looking forward to you helping me get my brain better.
Hmm. Yeah, you were definitely beating yourself up a lot.
Yeah, so some of the mindset things that I thought were really helpful is, I never understood about the habit brain, and I catch myself all the time now, um, doing things, and I'm like, okay, I have to stop doing that. I even have been talking to my older son about it lately because I don't want him to get in the habit of when he's so young, and then by the time he's my age, trying to break that habit would be even harder. So it's something I really have just loved learning about because it's so true, and just the way that you talk to yourself really matters, and the effects of that negative self-talk. And I guess one of the biggest things that has been very helpful with your mindset work as we've gone through this is, when I gain weight or if I'm having a day where I'm eating too much, instead of just freaking out and getting down on myself, and I'm sure you remember a lot of my emails where I'm like freaking out, and but I step back now and I'm like, okay, well, what have I been doing? And, what, let's look back at my food. Where have my calories been? And, using the chart that you set up for me is very helpful because I know if I'm above or below where I'm supposed to be. And, what kind of foods am I eating? Am I getting my steps in? And so instead of just like going right to the bad things in my head, I try to make myself just, evaluate and use it as a learning tool, and just get a better understanding of how all of this works so that I can use education versus emotion. And that's been hard. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but a lot of times I just use the different things that we've talked about, even if it's just telling myself to stop and like take a couple breaths, and then I try to redirect my thoughts to, okay, well, what did I do today that was good? And, I always get my steps in. I always get my weightlifting in. I always am trying to find new recipes that have higher protein. So when I get really jumbled in my head, I will try to, think about things that I'm doing well.
Hmm.
So I also think I've learned, to use other measurements of success. I always use the scale, and I always, for some reason, and I don't know why, because no one ever told me this, but I always thought that it had to happen in a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
And now I'm like, why? Why does it matter? You and I've been working together for 5 years, and I think I've had some good success, and it's been very slow. I mean, for months, sometimes, nothing's going, but I'm working on other things and I'm being consistent, and then something good happens. And I'm like, why? If it's slower, you think it's probably better. And I still get to have ice cream a couple days a week. I still get to,
Yep.
have a slice of pizza on Friday night or whatever it is. And I'm still achieving my goals. And why does it have to be in 30 days? Like that's something that as I'm looking back on what we've been through in this last year, that I just realized that I have my whole life to work on these goals, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's very hard to add muscle and get leaner. And, I'm not wanting to be super strict with just eating chicken breasts and broccoli all the time. So I'm okay with it now. Like I'm not as stressed out to get the weight off so quick anymore. And I think that that's been really good for my mental aspect. I also never really thought to take measurements before I started working with you. I always just thought it was the scale. And um, I've had a lot of success with measurements as we've been working together, and my scale weight hasn't changed, as much as I was hoping, but my measurements have changed significantly. And
Yep.
so that really helped me. I'm going to start in the next, my next plan is to start working on getting my body fat tested. I'm just struggling with finding a place around here that does it. But I want to start doing that. I want to see if all of my strength training is really working, and just have different guidelines for if I'm successful or not versus just getting on that scale and being so emotional when it doesn't go the way that I want it to.
Yeah, we had to go work a lot on your mindset around the scale and not overreacting to the number and really retraining you to look at like your measurements. And that body fat percentage was way more important than whatever that number on the scale, because you're somebody who's already leaner. You didn't have like 50 or 70 pounds to lose.
Yes. And so it's a little bit harder for me to see changes sometimes, and that gets frustrating.
Yep. Yep. For sure. Those are all good lessons. And I also wanted to circle back to what you said about how you like had an expectation and you never really realized it, like you just thought the scale should be going down at a certain frequency. I think a lot of people think that. They're like, I'm in a 500 calorie deficit. Why am I not losing like a pound a week?
Yeah.
That's what the math says. It's just math. And I'm like, but our bodies are actually, not wired that way. Like our bodies have a lot more things going on, especially as females, right? So our energy is always kind of fluctuating. So the math isn't always the right math, depending on the week, the day, the month, right? There's a lot of things that can influence that energy balance. But that is kind of like, the basic just is like, hey, 500 calorie deficit is going to give you a 1 pound a week. But for most midlife women, it just does not equate to that. And because you're leaner, it really does not equate to that. Most of your changes are going to be in your measurements, which is what we had to work a lot on. But I think you're right. I think there probably are a lot of people out there who think just like you, oh, it should just be going down 1 pound a week. Why is it not going down 1 pound a
Yeah.
week? I must be doing something wrong. It's me. I'm doing something wrong.
I'm dieting. Why am I not getting skinnier? Yeah. Why? Yeah. It's very frustrating. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. So those I think are a lot of the things. And I mean, it's good. I'm not crying every day anymore. And
Yeah.
have the ability. I mean, when I first came to you, I was terrified of going out to dinner. Like I shied away from seeing my friends because I didn't want to have the calories, and it just was a lot. So, I do think I've made a lot of progress, and I really appreciate being able to email you when I'm having a panic or freak out moment. And you always, write me back with such logic and, talk to me. And then when we have our meetings, we would go through what I was doing, and you would tell me, well, Sarah, you're just eating too much, or Sarah, this, let's try this or let's try that. And you gave me a lot of really specific suggestions as far as food on, like how to get more protein. You weren't telling me what to eat, but you were saying, hey, add a cheese stick in, or, add instead of 3 ounces of whatever, eat 4 ounces because you'll get more protein. And so just things I don't know why, but I had never thought of before. As far as like the protein cereal suggestion, putting that in yogurt, or just it was nice to have somebody that was kind of telling me, instead of just saying, oh, well, you need to, kind of this nebulous thing. It was like, well, let's look at what you're doing and let's figure out ways that specifically we can make changes. Because again, if you give me instruction, I can follow it. Even if it's like, Sarah, go find a recipe. I mean, again, you didn't give me a specific food plan, which I think is better, because probably half the stuff that I think people have given me in the past, I don't enjoy eating. So it's always very stressful. Like if somebody tells me to eat scrambled eggs for breakfast, I don't like scrambled eggs. So then I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? But you would say you need to get your protein up, or we need to be at a certain level of this, and so I just knew it was my job to find ways to stay within my calorie range, but to change those numbers a little bit. And usually it worked. And so that was, that kind of gave me that feeling again of having some control over all of this, which is what I really needed.
Hmm. Yeah, you were definitely not mentally in a good place when we started. And I really want to stress that to the listeners. Mentally, well, and I would even say physically, because you talked about your hair falling out, and that is always a red flag that there's a problem with metabolism and thyroid. When hair starts
Mhm.
falling out, we're not getting enough calories, we're not getting enough nutrients, our body is undernourished when hair starts falling out. And mentally, you had all these other things going on, some weight gain, right? But mentally, that was really where a lot of our work was initially, because I mean, in the beginning, every coaching call, there were a lot of tears and a lot of, just feeling like you didn't trust yourself, you didn't trust your body, you weren't sure if you were going to trust me. And we really had to work on kind of building that trust, building the relationship, even between you and I, building the relationship with yourself. Like you said, even like going out with friends or going to gatherings was a difficult thing for you.
It was
And,
very stressful.
yeah, I mean, so for you, this has really like been a big success for you to be where you are right now, like 18 months later, because prior to us working together, you weren't able to do any of that stuff. It was almost like you were incarcerated.
Yeah, no, I definitely did not have the ability to get myself out of the funk prior to all of this. And the funk is still, it's still lingering there, but now I'm much better equipped to fight back the funk. And, I at least can get myself where I'm like, okay, stop. Look at all these things you're doing. You're so consistent. You're doing way more than half the people around you. I think that's another part of all of it is, I mean, I think we all do comparison to other people. And where I work, most of the people here are extremely fit, extremely lean. And so, even as much as I exercise and take care of myself, like I'm surrounded by these people all day and you're comparing yourself to them. And I'm like, I'm doing so much. Why is this not happening? And I just wasn't doing the right things. I was doing a lot of things, but I wasn't doing what I needed. And so that was just super frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You were focusing on a lot of the things that weren't going to actually get you to your goals. They were actually getting in the way of you getting to your goals, which is pretty common. I see that a lot. A lot of confusion around what to focus on and what not to focus on. Yeah. So definitely you have the added pressure with being in law enforcement too, because there, anytime you are in law enforcement or right in the military, army, and I've had some clients come from me in that regard too, there's that added pressure of being able to be physically active and, meet their standards and even sometimes weigh-ins. So, there's
Yeah.
that added pressure. I think that average people in the population don't have to deal with their job like you do.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely part of it. And I mean, I agree with having certain standards for law enforcement, but you're right, especially as you get older and you have kids and your body changes, it's not as easy anymore. And the things I was doing that I did 10 years ago were no longer the things I was having success with. So that was very frustrating.
Yeah, doing all the cardio and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I could do cardio for days. I love doing cardio. In fact, I get a little sad in the mornings when I'm lifting that I'm not doing cardio, but um, I I tell myself that cardio is not going to get me where I want to be, so I go pick up the weights and get to work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's part of it. Sometimes it's accepting that, hey, I have to do things differently in order to get to where I want to be. So,
Yeah, and I think, I was thinking about some of the things I really learned as I was looking back at things that we have talked about, and I was looking at my journal and some of the exercises we've done, and some of the things I just wanted to share that I didn't realize before I started working with you is I'm the only one that's thinking these things about myself and my body, right? No one's looking at me when I'm out and about and going, oh, that girl has kind of jiggly arms, or wow, wasn't she smaller last time I saw her? Or, she could really use some work on her abs. I mean, no one thinks that stuff, Megan, but I, for some reason, was so worried about,
yeah,
what people would think, and no one's thinking it. You're the only one that
yeah.
is thinking those things about yourself. So again, the self-talk is just so important. And the other thing that I really started thinking about while we were doing all of this is I would never talk to any of my friends, even people that I don't like that much, the way I was talking to myself. And it's just, I was thinking one day as I was listening to a podcast and I was out walking and I was listening to you talk, and I think you talked about this, and I thought if one of my friends like overate at Christmas and was feeling down, like I wouldn't be telling her what a loser she was and she deserved to gain
Yeah.
weight. And I would never say that to somebody. I would say to them, well, it was one day, just figure it out the next day. And if you want to go for a walk, I'll go with you. And, but here I was just saying these god awful things to myself that,
Mhm.
I would never say to anyone else. And I just was asking myself, why? Like, why am I doing this? It's not working and it's just making me so sad all the time. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's other people out there, but if you really think about it, like there's no one in your life that you would talk to the way you talk to yourself sometimes. And it's definitely something that I needed to fix. And, I've tried to work on becoming a cheerleader for myself instead of thinking about the things I wish I did better. I try to focus now on, well, what did I do today? And, how did I do that? Whether it was something, related to my calories or exercise or even just at my job or with my kids, so that I'm, giving myself more internal rewards instead of just, thinking about all the things that I could be doing more perfect.
Yeah. You're talking to yourself not like a jerk anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I yeah. Yeah, I'm trying not to eat like a jerk or talk to myself like a jerk, as you would tell me. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. I know it's so funny what you said though. You'd never tell your friend, you're such a loser. Why did you eat an entire pizza last
Yeah.
night? Like
Why
you
did
would
you have to
never
have
say
two
that.
plates of spaghetti? Nobody does that. Like
Right?
you would say that to someone.
And we somehow think like if we talk to ourselves that way, that we're going to suddenly like want to change for the good. No, we're not going to want to change when we're constantly like bullying ourselves.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
especially if you're an emotional eater like I am. Like, I mean, just making yourself feel more sad makes you just want to eat more. So it's
Right.
not good.
Right. It's a
You
vicious
know.
circle.
Yeah, it really is. My husband frustrates me so much because when he gets upset, he can't eat for like 3 days. Meanwhile, I'm in the corner like, binge eating. And I'm like, why can't I feel that way? Like if I was yelling at myself all the time and didn't want to eat, maybe, but I mean, that's not healthy either. I'm not saying that's a good thing to do. It's just, yeah, you're right. When you're being so down on yourself and you're so emotional about it, it makes you want to like, eat and it's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's the opposite of what you want. And I don't think before I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think you realized you were doing this until we started kind of working through some of this with your mindset.
No, I did not know at all. I just, was reacting the way I had always reacted. I was trying something, it wasn't working. I felt like a failure. I felt frustrated. My clothes were fitting me horribly. I did not like the way I looked in pictures. And I just couldn't understand why. I mean, I was exercising 2 or 3 hours a day. I thought I was doing my food right. And I just hit this roadblock and yeah, I just didn't know what else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were the things that you previously thought you knew about weight loss that are different now. Is there anything that we missed?
Um, I would say that those are kind of my main takeaways is just
Okay.
not to set such a time limit for yourself and to, use failures as a way to evaluate what you're doing instead of getting down on yourself and just treat yourself the way that you would your best friend and, try to be a cheerleader for yourself because as women, I mean, typically we're doing a lot of stuff and, trying to work on yourself in the midst of all of that you should be commended for it even if you're just thinking about it it's still something, right? I mean it's
Hmm.
really hard to make time to do these things as you get a career and get a family or have friends or aging parents.
Yeah.
All of that is very challenging and I decided that I wanted to do this and make it a priority and my husband was very supportive of all of this. He built me a basement gym, so now I get up at 5 o'clock every morning and I work out because it's the only time of the day that I know nothing's going to interfere with getting my strength training in. And I'm lucky with my job that we get exercise time, so I use my lunch and that time to get my steps in. I take a walk every day at work and um, I just had to find a way to make it work for me. But, even doing all of that with my bad brain it just was, I needed to make a change. And I'm very thankful for all of the work that you've done with me and the things that you've taught me. And I really am happy that I have my notebook that I made while we were doing our work to go back to, because sometimes I forget all the things. I mean, we've been working together for a year, and at the beginning it was hot and heavy. And, 6 months later, when we went to doing just once a month for 30 minutes, some of those things I don't remember. And so
Yep.
every once in a while, I'll get my notebook out and I review a lot of the lessons, especially the mindset and the self-talk stuff. And I'll read through it. If I'm having a really bad day, sometimes I do a thought dump and I try to, after I write down all my thoughts, I try to come up with, what are some things that I can do to tackle whatever I'm struggling with, or what are things that I'm already doing that I'm not appreciating enough. So, you've given me a lot of coping strategies and ways to feel like I'm still empowered even when I'm not having success, because now I'm like, okay, well, this isn't working. What can I do? What are some of the tools that I have now to to either figure out a solution or to at least, not go down the drain with my brain.
Not go down the drain with my brain. I like that
Yes.
phrase. I might be
Yeah.
borrowing that.
Go ahead, use it up.
Awesome information. I think you shared a lot of ton of, great information today to help people. I guess, there's other women on this podcast listening who are just like you, dealing with the same kind of issues that likely you have dealt with, probably dieting since they were a teenager, probably saw some of the same diets you even mentioned, some of the issues mindset wise. I guess if they're listening and you're talking to them, what would your advice be to them?
My advice would be to appreciate yourself more. I think a lot about 20 years from now. I don't want to look back and think all I did was worry about my weight or my size or what I was eating. Like, I really want to enjoy my family and my kids at this age while they're home and they still love spending time with me. And so I would just encourage other women to treat yourself like you would your best friend and to cheer for yourself, even if it's just, hey, I took a 5-minute walk today, or hey, I meal prepped some food on Sunday, so I have healthy lunches for the week. All of those are victories for people that work and have other commitments.
Yeah.
So you have to appreciate those things and not focus on what you're not doing, but focus on what you are doing. And even if it's just, as you've taught me, setting one new goal and working on that one goal, if you do it every day, I mean, think about when you make your kids like a chore chart and they get a smiley face, maybe make yourself a chart and did I get my steps in today? Did I talk nice to myself? And give yourself that congratulations because over time it will build up and it will really help. And if you need help with it every once in a while, sometimes I go to my husband and I say, can you give me kind words today because I'm struggling? Or, can you point out something that you see that I'm doing that I may not recognize? And he always comes up with something that I'm like, oh, that's really cool that he realizes I'm doing that.
Uh,
So I think, whether it's asking Megan or asking people around you when you have a hard time on your own coming up with support or cheerleader statements. There's so many people in your lives that would probably offer those to you. You can always call me, I'll give them to you because I've been through it and I know how hard it is. And I think, as women and as friends, we need to encourage each other and focus more on the positives.
yeah. We have to focus more on what we are doing versus what we're not doing and how far we have to go. I love what you said because I think a lot of people that right there just kind of mentally it stops them from making progress.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And they just get bogged down in their minds. But if every day they were thinking about something they did well, I think it encourages you too, because you're like, oh, well, that worked. Maybe I could do something else now, and or I can walk longer, or I could, add something to what I'm able to do. And I think that that's just ways to, just continue your progress.
Yeah, imagine like if you had like one of your kids, and I don't know what grades your kids are in, but like one of your kids in fourth grade, and you're like, okay, I know that it's like summer break and you just got out of grade, but you have a really long way to go. Like you have to get all the way through high school, you have to get all the way through college, and then you're gonna have to get a job. Like, I mean, imagine if you kind of talk to your kid that way
Yeah.
about like, their life. Like they would feel like totally like, oh my gosh, this feels like a mountain that I have to climb. This feels awful.
No, that's a really good analogy. Right now we're just focusing on reading 10 minutes a day over the summer. So you're right. Like if I were to tell them all of those things, they would want to run away. But it's a good analogy. It's a really good analogy.
Wonder we want to run
Um,
away from weight loss because that's how we talk to ourselves.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think anybody has the ability to make changes and,
Yep.
as long as you're willing to try and, you're willing to try it for a period of time, not just a little bit. You can achieve things. It might not be on your time scale. It might not be exactly what you had envisioned, but there's all different types of victories and you just have to be cognizant of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Love what you said, Sarah. Love it.
Oh, good.
Great amount of information, and just thank you, because I know it's not easy to be vulnerable and just share your story and share what you've been struggling with and basically open up your heart and mind to everybody. But I really appreciate it. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from everything you shared today and your perspective on things you've learned, things you're still working on, which I love, because we're always work in progress. So I love that you shared some of that stuff too. But thank you for sharing this. I'm sure it's going to help other people who are listening, and keep in touch. I'm super proud of what you have accomplished. You can always come back anytime you need me. I'm always here. I'm not going anywhere, so I'm always here, and I love to hear from past clients. So make sure you keep in touch. Okay.
I will. Thank you. And thank you again for everything you've done for me this last year. It's really been a life changer.
Aw, I'm so happy to hear that. Well, dear, you take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, you have to come check out my free weight loss class. It's the 5 steps to lasting weight loss, how hormones impact weight loss, and the truth about lasting weight loss without relying on willpower, workouts, or deprivation. Click the link in the show notes to watch that free class today. And if you are a woman over 35 with 20 to 50 or more pounds to lose, schedule a free weight loss breakthrough session with me after you watch that class, and let's talk about your 20 to 50 or more pound weight loss plan.